You're listening to
Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Way below acceptable. Way below acceptable.
On this week's episode,
I had this idea of watching Black films because I realized, because I was a huge movie buff as well as loving comic books, but I realized that I wasn't giving Black movies, I was kind of like prejudging them.
Way below acceptable.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sticky Note Conversations. My name is Erika Washington, and I am your host and executive director of Make It Work Nevada. Today, I'm really excited because I get an opportunity to have a conversation with two really dope men that I have been following and listening to their podcast for a number of years. I want to say at least since 2019, 2018. I can't even remember when I first started listening. But the Micheaux mission, which is two men, one podcast, every Black film ever made. And that tagline, honestly, was enough for me to get hooked. So I want to tell you a little bit about the hosts, Vincent Williams and Len Webb, who are both on a mission to watch and review every African-American film that has ever been released to theaters. Together, the two men of the Micheaux mission, named for Oscar Micheaux, the first and most successful Black filmmaker of the first half of the 20th century, hope to find the perfect wine to complement Pam Grier's coffee, the 5 movies since 1985 in which Sam L. Jackson does not appear, and someone who agrees that with Len that The Last Dragon is a bad film. A little more background. Len Webb is a radio podcast producer and host and creator of the award-winning Geek culture show, The Black Tribbles, and co-producer of the music podcast, The First Time I Ever Heard, with Toya Haynes. He also created the irreverent comic strip, Heaven Sent. Plus, Len loves pretzel bites, which according to Vincent makes Len a serial killer in training. Vincent Williams is a lifelong pop culture fan and scholar, offering music, film, and television criticism for the Baltimore City paper before moving into academia as the assistant English professor at Drexel University and hosting It's All Soul, a weekly music show focusing on 70s soul and 90s hip hop for G-Town Radio. He gets his new comic books every Wednesday and is comfortable with the fact that he has the passions of a 12-year-old. I would like to welcome two really fabulous podcast hosts to Sticky Note Conversations. Please welcome Len and Vincent to the show. Hello. How are you?
Fine. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Erika.
I am so excited to see you all again. As some folks might know, I had the opportunity to be a guest on the Micheaux mission just a couple of weeks ago and got to fly all the way out to Philadelphia, which, you know, is not a hard pull for me anyway, because I really do love your city. I think it's a really dope place to be. And I didn't realize probably till 2 days before that it was a possibility that your sports ball team, the Philadelphia Eagles, won the Super Bowl. And so I landed that next morning after their big win. So the whole vibe of the city was just like, it was palpable. And so it was really dope to be there. Like I said, I almost bought a Eagles t-shirt. I did not, but you know.
Boo.
So I want to start out asking about how you two met, like how this team came to be, because one of the things that fascinated me about this podcast is, one, the longevity of it. Doing a podcast is not an easy feat, and it's not the most lucrative feat unless you are somebody with a contract through one of these major, pod places. But for you to just want to do something and then commit to it on a weekly basis and then stay engaged and then always trying to make it better, it's a marriage in itself. It's a whole nother relationship that you have to hold on to. So I would love to hear about how you two met and then decided to do this particular show.
Oh, wow. We get to tell our meet cute, Vincent.
Yes.
Well, and Vincent will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we met at this old internet radio station here in Philadelphia, G-Town Radio, where At that time, I was already doing my radio show, the Black Tribbles, about being a geek, a Black geek. But I was also on the committee that would welcome in and vet new shows onto the station. And Vincent came in with his cousin, Daryl, with the idea of doing It's All Soul, because Vincent is a huge like music buff. And when he came in with the idea for the show, I said, "Oh, that sounds like a dope idea. I really liked it." And I liked his vibe. Vince seemed like a really cool dude. And we kind of like hit it off in our meeting. And I was like, "All right, you'll be great on the station." And then fast forward, I'm not sure exactly how long, maybe a few weeks or a couple, maybe even a couple of months after he was up and running doing the show, I was at a comic book shop in a mall where one of my co-hosts is actually the manager, because I'm a big comic book head. And in walking into the comic book shop is Vincent and his family. And that's where I found out that he was a comic book head. And I was like, wait a minute, you like comic books too? And we were around the same age, and he was, going towards the same comics. And all of a sudden, he just looked like the man I've been wanting to meet for my entire life. The stars shined in my eyes. I said, "Oh my God, that beard." That black skin.
We had similar interests. And like Len said, it seemed like we were traveling in the same circles anyway. So I think the friendship obviously was established, and this was years before the Micheaux mission.
Mm-hmm.
As Len said, Len was deep in the Black Tribbles. I was doing the show with my cousin and just, working and living. And then, and Len, you can come back in, because the Micheaux mission initially was Len's idea.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I had this idea of watching Black films, because I realized, because I was a huge movie buff as well as loving comic books, but I realized that I wasn't giving Black movies, I was kind of like prejudging them. Sometimes I would look at the trailers, and the trailers would seemingly tell me the whole story. I remember famously seeing the trailer for Lottery Ticket with Bow Wow and thinking, I've seen the whole story, and I wasn't to give it its just due. So I said, you know what? That's unfair of me. I'm an artist. I should give these Black artists a chance. Nobody is vetting Black films like this, giving them this opportunity to just be a silly Black film. Everything doesn't have to be Amistad. So I said, I'm going to start doing it. But to hold myself accountable, I said, I've got to make it intentional. Thus, I said, I want to do this as a podcast. I thought this might be a good exercise for a podcast. I was already up and running with Black Tribbles. I had some movie fans in my crew, so I asked them first if they'd be interested. They were all too busy. So then I looked around for another host, Vincent. I didn't even know if he liked movies, but I knew that he was intentional, he was smart, and I knew that he did kind of like pop culture type of criticism when he lived in Baltimore. So I approached him, and before I got the words out of my mouth, he said yes. And the Micheaux mission was born.
Well, I think the one thing about the Micheaux mission, that it feels like there will never be a time that you would be on the air unless y'all just got sick and tired of doing it, because there's always going to be new Black movies. And then there's always going to be Black movies. I know you have a list of ones that you hope to never have to do. So you'll do every other movie before that. So thinking about that, you just have, there's so many that you can do. I was thinking earlier this week, when I realized that we were going to talk, I was like, oh, we should review a movie that you wouldn't review on the Micheaux mission. And
I was about to say, are you trying to curse us?
Not at all. Not at all. And then I thought about doing a show, because there was something that you said on a recent episode. It was, I don't know if it was this past week or maybe 2 weeks ago, but you were talking about a couple different TV shows. And one of them you were talking about was Paradise with Sterling K. Brown. And I had started watching it. And then I realized it was only like 3 episodes or something. And I was very confused, because I'm like, well, where's the rest of the season? And I can't quite figure out like what's happening there. Like if that was like a teaser to see if people would be excited enough for a whole season of a show that features a Black man in the main character, a dark-skinned Black man as a main character, or what the formula was with that. And so I want to ask you what your thoughts were around it being 3 episodes in January. And now here we are in March.
Oh, no, the whole series is up.
Is there more than that?
Yeah, all 8 episodes are on Hulu.
Oh, there are 8. Okay, so maybe I'm not seeing all the episodes because I was looking and I could only find 3. Okay.
Yeah.
No, when they did drop it initially, they had dropped it with, I think, if I remember, actually 3 episodes. And it was a way of getting you like hooked onto the show. And then every other episode after that was released weekly. And as far as that type of release schedule, I can get behind that because it's a combination of binging and the weekly schedule. So they'll give you the 3 so you can like binge through 3. And if you're hungry for more, then it's going to come weekly. But if you still like the binging, then you can come back, go sit for a couple of weeks and let it pile up and then binge away. And the fact that it's 8 episodes, it's not like it's a long binge. You don't have to wait like for 22 like network TV series, 22 episodes to pile up to get the whole season. So it made sense. And the show itself, I mean, it's interesting. It definitely rewards, that weekly vibe because Vincent is a huge fan. He comes in every week screaming about Paradise. You watching Paradise? You in Paradise yet? It's time for Paradise, Len. So it rewards those who stick with it.
Right. I actually like the post-binge weekly model, where it seems like over the past few years, creators are realizing that we're used to binge shows, like we drop 12 episodes and people are going to barrel through them. So if we drop a weekly episode, there has to be enough in the episode for people to talk about for a week. So there are a few shows on Apple, as Len mentioned, I think Paradise was a great example of it, where it gave you that old school feeling of people sort of poring over the details and going back over and talking about lines. It's funny, this is relevant to this conversation, but if you look at early seasons of The Simpsons, you can tell the year when they started releasing them on DVD, because they start jamming all of these details into the episodes because they knew that people now had the ability to pause. And there's like, I don't know if it's between season 3 or season 4, but there's a quantum leap in just the sheer detail that you have from episode to episode. And I think you see that in spirit with a lot of shows now that are reverting back to the weekly schedule. So I'm a fan.
Yeah, I mean, it feels real old school to go to the weekly drop. And I think we've gotten really spoiled by having whole seasons. So I could just sit down on a Sunday and just binge and get through something instead of having to come back and forth. I think it also makes me have to remember it in my head to be like, because I actually don't watch TV every day. Like I don't turn on the TV and be like, it's like I used to when I was younger, because it was TGIF Fridays or whatever it was, not the restaurant, but the whatever, Full House, whatever was coming on Friday nights. And then there was what you watched on Tuesday nights and whatever I watched with my grandma on Saturday nights sort of thing. And so now it's just like, maybe on a Friday, Sunday might be the day that I watch the most TV. So then I end up binging in that way. And so I was doing that last night. There was a tornado warning in Missouri. And so I had to be in the basement and all of that. So I was watching 1923, which I also really enjoy. And I enjoy it in a very uncomfortable way because it's really gory. It's gorier than I would normally watch, because I think I've said before, I don't like scary movies. I don't like horror things. I do like things to be realistic. And 1923 is trying to pull off, I think, that realistic Old West and the slaughtering of the Native Americans and all of these different things that are happening. And so it's downright nasty sometimes.
And 1923, is that the Harrison Ford
show?
With
It's like the Yellow
with Helen Mirren. It's the prequel to Yellowstone
Right.
and the sequel to 1883 or 1885, whatever that one was. Because that one, that was the first spinoff with Faith and her husband, the country singers.
I know who you're talking about.
Mhm.
I know who you're talking about.
Those two. Very good. Those very good.
Okay, so that's like the Tyler Sheridan universe.
Yes.
Well, as gory as 1923 may be, I will tell you of the timid heart to stay away from Netflix American Primeval.
Yes, I started it and then I hit pause and I've never returned.
yeah, because it gets real quick and it just gets more real. So rejoice in the calm of 1923 because you could be on Netflix Primeval. There's
a lot of scalping happening on TV right now. There's a lot of scalping. I don't know who got into the room. It's like, you know what we need? We need another show where people are getting scalped.
We need heads on platters.
Or something. Oh,
you
goodness.
all aren't really selling this to me.
But the quality is there, right? Taylor Sheridan, I will say Taylor Sheridan, he's got something happening, where he is really Yellowstone. It took me a while to get into Yellowstone, to be honest. Like, I think I watched the first couple episodes multiple times before I actually was like, okay, maybe let me. And I don't know why I kept trying. I just kept trying. And then I got to a point where I was like, oh, and I think I had an expectation that it was going to be fluffy, maybe in that whole, how white people won the West and they were great settlers and they were just trying to find their own place in the world or whatever. And it wouldn't have any tangible realness to it as far as how awful it was and how intrusive it was. And there is some of that, but I don't feel like they sugarcoat it in the same way. I will say it's still very much for a certain audience that is not me. And there's that sense, get into that, American pride type of thing that they have going on there with the horses and a hard day's work. And we don't need cell phones. We just need to be out here getting our hands dirty because that's what men do. That's very much them.
You need to open air and Jesus.
Exactly. Get you a dog.
That's right.
And sleep under the stars.
That's right.
Them city folk, they come out here. A lot of beans. A lot of beans. There was a lot of beans being had in the early days too. I have a question. I think it's more for you, Len. What is a tribble?
A tribble is a little round ball of fur that is an alien that would reproduce asexual. And they were made famous from the classic 60s episode of Star Trek called The Trouble with Tribbles, where they inundated and ran amok on the starship. You look up GIFs of them, you'll see them all over there's pictures with William Shatner, like just showered with tribbles all over him. And the Black Tribbles was a show that I did for 10 years where we celebrated being Black and geek, but we didn't like the idea of calling ourselves necessarily geeks because our tagline was we were too cool to be geeks, too cute to be nerds, so we are Black Tribbles. Because if you ever looked at that episode, the Tribbles are their brown fur, their white fur, their some calico, but there's no Black Tribble. And so thus we are the Black Tribbles, and we would celebrate it. We'd be geeks. Fans of our show would name themselves after what they were geeky for. That's why I always introduce myself now and forevermore as the Bat Tribble, because I'm a huge Batman fan. And we had Superman fans, we had Star Wars fans, and everybody had their own Tribble designation.
Interesting. So I would have never known that. When you first started describing it, it sounded like a Monchichi. If anybody knows what a Monchichi is,
yes,
or
there.
Gizmo.
Yeah, Gizmo, Gremlins.
Gizmo, good. That's a good pull.
I did like Gizmo as a kid. But then I realized later that Gizmo was scary. Later. But at the time, I don't know why maybe I never watched the movie all the way through or something. I just saw how cute he was. And and I blocked the rest out. And this is all I remember.
That must be what it is.
I've said for years, they should have killed Gizmo immediately.
Yeah. They really should have.
Like immediately.
Why?
First of all, why are you taking new animals in as pets? That's first of all.
What do you mean taking new animals?
What is a gizmo?
He's an animal.
What kind of animal?
A gremlin.
A new one.
A little guinea pig, like a little.
Second, why are you taking new animals from mysterious, stereotypical Asian salesmen?
Oh, well, see, now you're being racist. He could have actually been a absolutely positive, friendly Asian, proprietor.
No. He was stereotypical. Like if he was just a regular Asian dude who worked at PetSmart, that's one thing. But you're in the smoky shop with the dude who looks like he's out of a 1940s comic book. Like the whole setup was shaky.
One man's smoky smoke is another man's mist of mystery.
Right. How'd that work out for him?
An illusion. Look,
right.
He gave them the rules. They didn't follow the rules. That's ultimately what the problem was. It wasn't Gizmo. Gizmo wasn't the problem.
But why would you want something that you would need that many rules for? Because you don't need that many rules with a cat or a dog.
First of all, we need rules with new babies. Everybody needs rules. All right. So don't give me why would you want something that you don't need rules for? We all come with instructions. So does a Gizmo.
3 children, I don't remember actually receiving any instructions. They were just like, oh no, see what happens. Hold his head up. Everything else, you just figure it out.
Right. Feed him periodically.
Right. When it cries, it wants something.
Right.
Now figure it out.
Just figure it out. Okay. All right. Well, see, wouldn't you have preferred to have instructions?
I would have, but knowing me, I'm not one that follows instructions very well. So I probably still been like, I don't know if I want to do that. So
you're one of those people that starts putting stuff together.
That's how I cook.
Oh, okay.
I look at recipes as a suggestive guide. And it's like, maybe you might want to put this. Maybe you might want to put that. And I'll look at the picture. I'll look what they do. And I'm sure. And then I'll do some things the way I want to. People like my food, so I don't see a problem with it.
Okay, then taking this all the way back to Gremlins, then why are we getting mad at the stereotypical mysterious
Because look
alien?
what they did. My food doesn't cause the same
stereotypical
problem.
people did by just taking the instructions as suggestions.
Terrible. The whole setup was terrible.
Yeah, I just have to agree with that. Moving on. Question for Vince. Mr. D'Urville Martin, which I am wearing my t-shirt today.
Very nice.
That I forgot at home last time. I will say that I honestly didn't really know who D'Urville Martin was before I started watching the show. Now, I had seen movies with him in it because I do like old movies, but I won't say that I knew who D'Urville Martin was particularly. And then lo and behold, there's this 6 degrees of D'Urville Martin. So everybody in the world is basically connected to D'Urville Martin. And I'll say, sitting next to you on the podcast, on your set, and watching it was like Rain Man. It was just like watching, it was watching magic happen in your head as you were just able to connect the dots to random white ladies to D'Urville Martin. And I was amazed. Where'd that come from? How did you know you could do that? Was that a party trick?
It really came very organically. Like, I don't know if it was on the Micheaux mission or just generally, but D'Urville Martin really is one of those actors who shows up in the most random places. Like a lot of actors in the 70s, the bulk of his work was in what we've come to call Blaxploitation films. But, like we always say, you look at something like, Rosemary's Baby, which is like the Roman Polanski iconic film. And it's D'Urville Martin over in the corner playing the chauffeur. And that's who D'Urville Martin is. He just kind of shows up. And then it went from there. And there's, of course, the classic party game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Mm-hmm. And we just started joking. You could do that with D'Urville Martin. And then someone basically dared me to do it. And I did.
If I remember, it was when we reviewed Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, because he shows up and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. And we were like, is that Derville Martin with
Is that
Spencer
Derville
Tracy,
Martin?
Spencer Tracy, and Sidney Poitier and Katharine Hepburn in the same movie? And then all of a sudden, the dots are connected because that takes you back into the 30s and 40s, all the way to the 70s and 80s, and you're like, this dude, he's our Kevin Bacon, and it was off and running.
Wait, so in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, is he the father? Is he Sidney Poitier's father? No.
He's in one scene where he plays like a hippie. Like Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn go out for ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're kind of older people. Like they're old. I think they're like 40. So they're like these real old people. And they go to get ice cream and they're a bunch of hippies and young people. And Derville Martin plays a hip young dude driving a speedster.
I'll have to go back and look at it again. I've seen the movie multiple times, but
Yeah.
I didn't recall that.
He's only in one scene.
Oh, okay. So he was just like, was he even credited?
Oh, he was credited.
He's credited because he has a line. The difference is that unlike most of his more famous roles in Blaxploitation, this one, he's just like Sterling K. Brown because he's a dark-skinned black man with no facial hair, which means that you're not sure whether or not you should trust him or not. So
I don't trust no man without facial hair. There's a thing that's a whole running thing. Just like I don't, and I'm surprised that I trust Sterling K. Brown, but I think he's a fellow St. Louian, and also I really liked This Is Us, and so and what was the movie he was in recently with Tracy Ellis Ross and
American Fiction.
American Fiction, yeah. He did a fine job in American Fiction.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes, he did. He did his thing.
Yeah, the bottom line is though, but it's really hard to trust men without facial hair. So I appreciate both of you and your facial hair.
All right, well, good.
So that's the other reason why I can listen to your podcast on a regular basis, because I already know.
You can hear the facial hair.
Yes, you can hear the testosterone that's coming through the mic.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, the first thing that came to my mind was when I thought he was maybe the dad, because I can't recall if they even show his father or not. But I hated the way that Sidney Poitier spoke to his father in that scene. It was so disrespectful to me. And I got what he was trying to say. Like he was trying to, say that he was different and he was a modern man and all of these different things. And I think it's that watching something when you're younger versus watching something when you're older. And now my children are not children. They are tax-paying voters aged. And so seeing them matriculate through life and seeing them come into their own, my parenting has to be different, right? I have to give guidance, and you're still sort of parenting, but it's in an entirely different way than just, I need you to do what I told you to do and do it this way sort of thing. But watching him, I was just like, oh, you needed to be slapped like you were Raisin in the Sun at this moment, because he was being highly disrespectful. I just want to say that.
Just not to go too far down the Guess Who's Coming to Dinner rabbit hole, but it's a strange movie because of the interracial relationship, Sidney Poitier has to be amazingly non-threatening. So he has to kind of have this very even-keeled emotional range. But at the same time, you have to give him a big scene. But you can't have him be over-emotional with the white people. On the other hand, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn can't be quote-unquote racist. So, you can't really have a conflict between this milquetoast black man and these super liberal white people. But he has to have this emotional moment. So let's have him yell at his dad.
Yeah, the other black man in the room.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that you say it that way, then it just makes it's a whole nother way to think about it altogether, because then it's really less about is that a good description of like what life would have been like for him in that moment? Or if they were actually keeping it real, that the real friction would have been with the parents or even with the young girl that he was marrying, whose name I can never remember. But,
White girl.
The white girl. She didn't really have much, like,
No.
it wasn't about her at all, but really thinking about how would they have lived and thinking about just even if their parents didn't have to be racist, but they could have been overly concerned because of the times and because of the world and the way that it was and the way that it is.
Well, to me, I think that it also speaks to the myopic view of the screenwriting on that film, and that it tries to blanket itself in this progressivism of this interracial couple and how the generation before, as depicted in Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, begrudgingly come to, acceptance of it. But in their acceptance, they still have to show that they are lords of the place, and they're showing their equals, Sidney Poitier's parents, how it should be done, right? So that Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, and more so Spencer Tracy, because I think this may have been one of his last films, if not his last, can have this moment where he is the king of his castle in his home, and my will be done what I say, and now this is how it will be done going forth, and everyone in this room will bend the knee to me.
I mean, no one ever mentions the fact he's like 10, 15 years older than her.
I know, right?
That was always my concern. I think this child was like 2 weeks out of college. And now this 35-year-old physician is sniffing around her.
2 weeks out of college, she looked like she could have been one of his students in
I know.
Undergrad.
Yeah.
Yeah, she always just seems so flighty. Like, look, I found a Black man. So excited, Mom. Come home with me. They'll love you.
Next week, she's going to bring home a frog.
Oh, don't get me started on cartoons and Black people. I'm still mad about Princess and the Frog and that other one with Jamie Foxx.
Yeah.
The Soul Man, Soul. That's Soul. So just Soul. Yeah. I was so disappointed. I was so disappointed. I was so disappointed. Like, I literally remember this was COVID, I think. This was COVID, right? Yeah. So all my offspring were back in the house because of COVID. And we were all excited to watch it. Like, oh, we can watch this together. And we hadn't watched like a family, like cartoonish type movie in a very long time. And so I was really excited to watch it. And then we sat down and we're watching it. And then next thing you know, he's no longer in a Black body. And I feel like my kids still liked it well enough, but I just remember sitting there irritated, like, oh, okay, so that's what we're doing. It bothered me. And I just like, can we not stay ourselves throughout the entire movie? Is that possible?
Yeah. That is the critique.
I enjoyed it myself. I thought it was tried to be original. I think it maybe tried a little bit too hard in some places, but I appreciated the attempt. I appreciated the look, the trying to be as authentic as possible in the depiction of the Black faces and Black bodies and culture that were on display in it. So at the end of the day, I applauded it, and it was a shame that it wasn't able to get a theatric release. Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure it would have if it would have been not COVID. I have a question for you, both of you, about Blaxploitation. I want to know your thoughts around whether or not you feel it was a necessary way in which Black actors and Black content made it to a mass audience, and do you think that we would be able to be where we are today, which is not nearly as far as anybody would like us to be as far as being able to tell Black stories, but also could we be further behind if we didn't have that piece? Was Blaxploitation important in the trajectory of Black film?
I think so. I think so. I think, first of all, I think we use that paintbrush way too broadly. when we talk about Blaxploitation, like, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Black is spoken of in the exact same conversation with Claudine or the Learning Tree, just because it's Black people in it. So I think you have to start there. But, even taking it at its, in my mind, its most precise definition, like you talk about something like the Mac or Superfly or, Black Sisters Revenge, like the most kind of grindhousey Blaxploitation films. I'm a big champion of those films, mainly because this is the first time that you had film aimed towards Black audiences. Like, certainly on the other side of the camera, for every Gordon Parks, it was 50,000 sort of 30-year-old white boys just churning it out. And I think you do have to acknowledge the lack of creator on behind the camera for a lot of Blaxploitation. But I do think that anytime you have a group of films aimed towards a Black audience, that is important. And then the greatest examples of it, I think you see strains of it in the way we talk about Black love, certainly Black action. Even what you just said about the facial hair, like we're joking about Black men with facial hair. This is the moment when we got to see images of Black men masculine in this way. So I'm always going to go to bat for Blaxploitation.
Yeah, and I think the proof of how important it is that Hollywood, traditional mainstream Hollywood reacted to it and tried to give us their own version of quote unquote Blaxploitation, tried to get in where they could fit in that place, started trying to pick some of the stars out of Blaxploitation, whether it be Jim Brown, whether it be Fred Williamson or whomever. So just the fact that they were reacting to it, just the fact that they said, oh, this is working. They have found an audience and they are being successful in it. Now, could you argue that some of the work during that time period kind of little derivative, like Vincent said, Grindhouse aesthetics and budgets and, not the most, erudite writing or scripting behind it? Sure, there was some of that, but was it Black bodies on screen, Black culture on screen? Yes. Was it for us? Yes. Was more often than not, a lot of it by us? Certainly more than had been, and certainly more than had been at that time. And I think that's the reason why at that moment you have Sidney Poitier, Bill Cosby, Harry Belafonte, and some of the names who were bubbling to the top, Brock Peters in the 60s, start to kind of like lose their edge and lose their relevance because they were trapped in mainstream Hollywood making work that had to have this broad appeal, while all of this art was being created just for us, coming into our neighborhoods, finding an audience, finding resonance, sounding like us in their speech, having our music blasting on the soundtracks. So therefore our musicians were getting their shine. It was definitely very important. And it made the way for those that followed. Spike Lee, Barry Jenkins, Ava DuVernay, all of them. What happened in Los Angeles around that time in the late 70s and 80s, all of that is because of what happened in the early 70s with the quote unquote Blaxploitation films.
I think I agree. And maybe it's because, most of them don't age well, right? Like, so you see clips come through and you're like, uh-oh. Especially, the women getting slapped around and, Glenn Thurman. And I can't remember the movie where,
JD's Revenge.
Is that what it is? Where he's, and she's like, oh, oh, baby, that was the best fucking I've ever had. And he's like,
Mhm.
that's because you with the real player, whatever he says.
Mhm.
And then comes in, that's my bitch. And then the two guys fight, like the whole thing. Like, it is very comical, mind you. Like,
Sure.
it's very comical. And for me, because it was before my time as far as seeing it in real time,
Sure.
it's like, was this meant to be funny at that time, or was that just how people saw things? And so I think that's where I get, like, now it's just hilarious because it seems like satire, whereas it's hard to know whether or not it's not actually satire. And that's just like people thought, oh yeah, that's how you talk to a woman, and then you fight and then move on.
Well, I do think part of the problem is that we only see these clips.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't see it like in JD's Revenge. I don't know if you've ever watched the entire film, but that character that Glenn Turman is portraying, he's actually possessed by the spirit of a gangster.
Oh.
So him talking like that, and he has the perm, and like that is actually plot-wise something that is intentional. Now, having said that, there are a lot of films that that actually play it quote unquote straight with that same kind of dialogue.
Their other folks aren't pimp possessed.
Right. They are not pimp possessed. But I know we say a lot of it ages badly, but I think most things age badly.
True.
Like just generally. So
That's true. I mean, just the whole idea of slapping women in those films. And don't get me wrong, it definitely hits you differently now in the 21st century. And you question, why didn't it hit people differently back then? But just taking that action alone, that goes back to the 30s and 40s in mainstream films, where if it's a hysterical woman, there's plenty of scenes of the guy slapping her, and it's acceptable behavior. It's like, it's what you did, right? So in the 70s, in their mind, they're portraying not only what has come before on film, but they're also trying to portray what they are seeing in real life in the streets, right? But you're right, but you see these clips and it takes some things out of context. Sometimes it takes things very much in context. Were they played for laughs? No, more often than not, they were played straight, but it was maybe a heightened reality. I would also argue that there are some of these films that people remember so much, not so much because of necessarily the clips or the films themselves, but it's just the imagery or the music. Vincent knows one of the most heralded films of this era is Superfly, and I contend that most people don't like the film. They just remember the great soundtrack, because the film is not a good film in my estimation at all, but the soundtrack is amazing. So that's what there are some images that do pop, but for the most part, the film it's absolutely forgettable, but the soundtrack reigns supreme. And I think those elements all together are what people remember, which is why most people outside of like film buffs, when they start talking about Blaxploitation, they'll name one or two scenes, one or two films that they have heard of and they've seen a GIF of or a poster of or whatever. But if you ask them to break down the stories, they don't know.
That made me think of something you all reviewed. And in the beginning, I would jump around because you already had quite a few episodes when I came into being the biggest fan of the Micheaux mission. But I wouldn't listen unless I watched it, right? Because I'm like, oh, I should watch it. But then that was moving too slow because I wasn't watching stuff as quickly as possible. So then I just started listening just to reviews. But one in particular, I made it a point to watch was Trouble Man. But when I saw Trouble Man, and I had never seen it before, and it's like, oh, great soundtrack. But the version I had didn't have, I was waiting for the song, and then the song never came on, and I was like, well, where's the song at? And then it wasn't until I listened to the review, and then you're like, oh, there was more than one version. You had to go find the right version. So I never did watch the right version that actually has the soundtrack in it. But watching it without it, I was like, oh, Yeah, it's fine, I guess.
Mhm.
I can't, like, most of it's not that memorable. Like, I didn't understand how he was able to just fight everybody and do all the stuff he did. I was like, oh, he's smooth, that's for sure. Because he walk into the room and fight 5, 6 people. But
Yeah.
it needed the soundtrack for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I think that is a generally accepted fact. Like, no one talks about Trouble Man in the film.
Yeah. Yeah. There are many people.
I
like
didn't know it
myself.
was a film. I didn't know it was a
Exactly.
film
Right.
until y'all told
Exactly.
me it was a film. I knew the
Exactly.
sound. I knew the
Yeah.
music. I knew Marvin Gaye. Oh, I was like, oh, it was a film. Okay.
I did not know it until Vincent told me.
Yeah.
I had absolutely no, and trust me, my headcanon is that it wasn't a film and that it was just the album.
Yeah, it wasn't much to write about. So
Right.
Not at all. I'm sorry that you wasted time with that.
it's
Right.
all right. I like to follow along because sometimes
Sure.
we agree, sometimes we don't. There were some that I like that either one or both of you didn't like. I can't remember off the top of my head. Only one that's coming to mind was Hero Ain't Nothing But a Sandwich.
Oh,
And I had never seen that before either. And so I watched it and I think I liked it more than you all liked it because I remember specifically there was a critique about Cicely Tyson and her acting or what have you. But I thought she was acting the way that a mother would act when she was, annoyed about her son being a crackhead, basically.
So that's Mac.
He was on it. And I mean, they were so young. It was so hard to like watch because I was like, what are they at 9? I did not know what the movie was about. And that's not where I thought it was going. And so I was like, oh, this is about drugs. It's not about sandwiches at all, really.
I thought we was going on a picnic.
Right. And just to connect it, Robert Hooks, so busy running around being Trouble Man, he wasn't taking care of his son. So now Kevin Hooks is a drug dealer. And a hero ain't nothing but a sandwich.
How'd that for a double feature?
Got that boy addicted to smack.
I mean, it was just like, I really can't recall what I thought the movie was about. I thought it was about family or something. I don't know. But I was like, oh my God, they're going to OD? Oh my God, what's happening here? It went way south. I want to ask you, what is your favorite movie? Do you have a favorite movie?
A favorite movie or a favorite Black movie?
Just a favorite movie.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't know. What is your favorite movie, Vincent?
Something you could just turn on anytime and just watch it.
Oh, well, see, yeah. It's the turn on any time because, I'd probably say Do the Right Thing or Daughters of the Dust, but those are certainly not turn them on anytime movies.
No, not Daughters of the Dust.
Not Daughters of the Dust.
Right.
Feeling a little melancholy.
Right. I mean, I might have to go back to the beginning. Like my ultimate turn on anytime movie would be Uptown Saturday Night.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can watch that and then put it right back on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my favorite movie is It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Oh, I've never seen that, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 1960s comedy. Be quiet, Vincent.
I didn't say a word.
That stars pretty much like a bevy of comedians and comic actors from the 40s and 50s in this wild chase to find money across the country. I watch it. It comes on television. I don't care where it's on in the film. It's about a 2.5-hour film, and I will sit down and watch it. I watch it probably 3 times a year. I love that movie.
Who's in it?
The stars, I'm glad you asked, are Milton Berle, Ethel Merman, Jonathan Winters, Mickey Rooney, Buddy Hackett, Sid Caesar, Spencer Tracy, and there's a bevy of cameos by Jerry Lewis, Jack Benny, Don Knotts, Peter Falk, Rochester. God, it's like tons of people. Terry Fields, tons of. It's just ridiculous.
All the old people. Okay.
Yes, I admit it's in color.
I like old movies. I love old movies actually. And I think that one of my favorite movies is His Girl Friday. Like I can turn on His Girl Friday at any time. I love the dialogue. There's so much dialogue in that movie. Like they're just going and going and going. And the camaraderie and the back and forth of it is great. And My Man Godfrey. I can watch My Man Godfrey anytime. I'm a big
I
William Powell fan.
I just watched My Man Godfrey again a couple of weeks ago. That is a good film. That is a good film. I mean, I am a William Powell fan, even though he, like Cary Grant, is definitely a one character dude. Like he plays William Powell in every film, but which is amazing in Godfrey because he's supposed to be homeless and yet he still plays like this rich drunk dude. But
He's
it
a
is a great movie.
sophisticatedly houseless.
Okay, that's what it is. Yes.
But I mean, but he really wasn't homeless, right? Because he really did come from money. So he didn't really know how to act poor, just like
No, he did not.
Slightly inconvenienced in the financial way. But I just find it hilarious. Like I think him and what's her name? I can never remember her name.
Well, that's I can't now you caught me in that.
Carol Lombard.
Carol Lombard.
Yeah.
Carol
Well,
Lombard.
she died in an airplane crash, right?
Yeah, yeah. Mrs. Gary Cooper, not Gary Cooper, Mrs. Clark Gable.
Yeah, she was married to William Powell too, though, wasn't she?
She was. They were married, then they divorced, and then she married Clark Gable. She was married to Clark Gable at the time of her death.
Yeah, but she was funny. Like she was really funny. Like it's such a tragedy that she died so young because she was so funny in that movie. Like watching those movies, like that movie, like The Women, all of these. I think there's another one, something about dinner. I can't remember the name of it, but you can see how it's just all current movies are regurgitated movies from, the past or what have you. It's like, oh, I've already seen this plot line like 6 times or whatever. And some of it's done better, some of it's not. But yeah, I'm a big fan of old movies. So I don't tease I've not seen a mad world. I'm not sure how many mads is in there, but I'm going to Google it and find it. 4 mads. One more here. We got one more in my notes. I just mad to the 4th power. Okay.
But to be fair, it is a color film. And while it is my favorite, it is rated as my favorite movie. It is. But I love a lot of newer movies as well. But as far as my favorite black and white film, since we're in the world of black and white, that would be The Apartment with Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine.
So Vincent, is it you don't like old movies? Or you stop at a certain
I like
generation?
I like the movies I like. I like the movies, but just generalized old
I like
movies.
what I like.
Right. Well, it's like I was saying about Blaxploitation. 80% of everything is garbage. Like whatever it is that you're talking about, 80% of it is garbage. But somehow, once you get past a certain year, when we talk about film, because everyone is wearing nice suits and, you have the orchestral music, we want to pretend 80% of those movies are garbage. But clearly they are. Like 20%, like every movie is not Casablanca. But somehow Turner Classic Movies can just throw on a movie and it's in black and white. And it's a white dude in a suit. And we all have to pretend that, this is a classic movie. No. They're just wearing nice suits.
They don't. First of all, I don't like you being reductive like that. They put these films on their network, right? And it's the same as when you turn on HBO or any of these streaming channels or cable back in the day, and there will be movies on. And not every movie is a classic, but every movie has something to offer to somebody. Now, back in those days, more often than not in the films were people wearing suits. Yes, and more often than not, it's because they were trying to present a point of view of life that people weren't seeing on the streets. Maybe it was trying to be more aspirational. I don't know. It's all propaganda at the end of the day. But Turner Classic Movies is just putting on these films and people are going to get out of it what they get out of it. And a lot of times when you watch those films and the little hosts come on before, they'll give you a little bit of a context about the film, a little bit of history. And that makes you start watching the film from a totally different point of view. In so much as this may not be a great film, but I like what this is saying about this part of life or what this says about this actor at this time, what this says about life at this time. And that's really what they're trying to do. If something is truly a classic, they say that it's a classic and they represent in what way it's a classic. They're not trying to front like everything is a classic. Okay.
You could have taken out that and replaced it with Tyler Perry movies.
You could have.
Like everything has something for everybody. You pull certain things from certain movies.
Mhm.
So you can say that about anything.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We say that when we review Tyler Perry movies.
Okay.
It's not for me, and we may pick it apart production-wise, but the man has found his audience. He's one of the most successful director producers in Hollywood history. The man makes more money than some movie studios. Can't knock the brother. I can knock it, the work, but I can't knock the brother and his business acumen.
So there you go. Black and white movies or Tyler Perry. It's something for everybody.
Say, as someone who is not a complete fan of Tyler Perry movies, but appreciate the amount of work he offers to actors and other folks, I feel like his period piece movies come off better than not period piece ones. So the most recent one about the
6888.
that one.
Mhm.
And then there was one, the Jazz Man's Blues or something like that. I watched both of those. And although I had plenty of critique, it felt like maybe he has less room for tomfoolery, I guess. I don't know. That I feel like they're better done than a Medea or even his other ones where he's always mad that a woman has a job and not concentrating on her man. One of those.
I didn't see the Jazz Man's Blues. I haven't seen that one yet. It'll pop up on the mission sooner or later. 6888, you're right. You do have there are valid critiques to be made about that film. But I think one, because he is trafficking in the world of real story with that story of that postal battalion in World War II, all women. Because it's a true story, there is less room for improvisation on the story side for him there. And I think also because that production specifically, because of the actors who he was working with and the producers he was working with in front of and behind the camera, I think he was not left to his own devices as much, right? So you had people like, he probably was trying to show and prove, like I gotta put a couple more zeros in that wig budget for the 6888.
Just don't understand how you could be friends with such rich people and just not have better wigs. Question that I want to ask before we wrap up. I want to get your professional thoughts on streaming. There's so many streaming platforms now. I'm a person who cut the cable cord a long time ago, 15 plus years ago, since I've had cable, probably longer than that. And because it made more sense and I spent a lot less money. And now it feels like I'm spending probably about the same, if not more, with the amount of streaming services that I have in order to watch all of the different things that I want. And then overall, I think folks go to the movies less. But there are things that you see on the screen that it moves you differently. And I would say Wicked is one of those, and I saw that on the screen twice. And I think on your most recent episode, the movie
All Dirt Roads Taste of Salt.
Yes, I haven't seen that yet, but I did hear you all recommend seeing it on a larger screen.
Yeah.
So wondering, do you feel like streaming has taken away from the film experience and people having to go to the theater to see something and experience it that way and experience around other people instead of just being able to be in your house by yourself on your screen and looking at it? Do you feel like it takes away from the experience?
I think it does. I think for a lot of films it does. I do think for many of us, we kind of make the calculation now when a film comes out. Is this something that is worth, frankly, leaving the house and seeing it on the big screen? At the same time, I appreciate the challenge that it makes to filmmakers, where I do think we are at a point in movie production where these creators know, in the case of something like, and I think Wicked was a perfect example, we have to go into this and raise the bar so high that people understand you need to see this on a big screen. So that ultimately, I think there are pluses and minuses. I do think a lot of films you can see in your home theater. I think the technology has gotten to the point, the screens are big enough, streaming is sophisticated enough that you don't necessarily have to see these mid-level films in the theater. But when you go to the theater, more often than not, it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. I think streaming has changed it and made you be more selective about the films that you are going to go see in the theater. I think that means that the challenge is to create properties as well as market them vis-a-vis the trailers in such a way that entice people to want to see this in the theaters. I think the big action movies have it easy because they can just show big, bold action that, yes, you may have a 65-inch screen, but you don't have IMAX. And IMAX, that's going to look totally different. And I think that's one of the selling points for Tom Cruise movies. You look at Tom Cruise trailers, Tom Cruise still packs them in the seats because there are scenes that you know are going to look absolutely different on a 3-story screen as opposed to on the biggest television in your home. The reason why these more mid-level features or like rom-coms start to find their way mostly on streaming is because they look like slices of life. They look like basically the dramas, the best dramas that you're finding on television now have those same aesthetics. The reason why a film like All Dirt Roads Taste of Salt, it was so appealing to us because the cinematography and the beauty of it just engulfs you the moment you see it. So that's why we advocate watching it on the biggest screen possible, because it's no longer in theaters, so that you could really take that in. I don't think that film was marketed in that way so that cinematography could be appreciated. And I think if it was, perhaps it sees longer life in the theaters, but it was an independent, so that's what happens. So streaming, has it hurt that movie-going experience? It has. Has it made it more selective? Certainly. But I would say that the movie theater experience is still alive. It's just changed a bit. And now it's become a little bit more challenged, but it's changed a bit. And I think that theaters are answering that challenge, and which is why they are bringing back a lot of films and putting them on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
I myself am traveling across the country to California on April 6th because for the first time in my life, I will be seeing It's a Mad, 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 Mad World on the big screen. I cannot wait.
Well, that sounds fun. I think I have seen, there's a theater here where they'll show old movies like on Sundays. And so I've seen My Fair Lady on the big screen, which I had never done before. And so that was fun. And then they did Funny Girl too, which I'm a big fan of Funny Girl. And they did that in concert with I think there was a off-Broadway. Well, no, it was an off-Broadway that was playing at the Fox. And so they showed that. And so that was happening there. So then they showed the movie at the movie theater. But I do like it when they have the orchestra. I've seen that with like 007 movies. They'll have an orchestra with it to accompany it. And then I did see something in Vegas once with an orchestra, but I can't remember because I just remember the tickets were free. And it was at the Smith Center in Vegas, which is a very large performing arts theater. And it's very high. And the tickets were free. So we were at the very top. And all I could think about was getting down because I was like, I can't look down and watch this anymore. So I don't even remember what it was we watched. I mentioned earlier that you all have been on the air since, is it 2016?
Yes.
Okay. So Micheaux Mission has been on the air since 2016. Why has it lasted so long? And do you have any tips for folks who are looking to get into the podcast world?
I will let Vincent answer why it's lasted so long. But my tips would be to first choose a subject that you enjoy. Choose something that you believe that you can sustain, because a lot of people just say like, I want to do a podcast and I just want to talk, but like, no, that's not it. You've got to have more than that. You've got to have a thought. You have to have an idea. You got to have structure. And then the other thing is just to be consistent, know that you're going to do this show. You say you're going to do it once a week. If you're going to do it once a month, I'm going to do it every Friday. I'm going to do it every third Friday. Be consistent with it, because that's the way that you build up an audience, because even if you've only got 20 people listening to you, those 20 people are going to be listening, looking out for you every Tuesday, whenever you say at 7:00, or if your show's going to drop on Wednesday, they're going to be looking on Wednesday. And the second you are inconsistent with it and you fall out of that habit, there's thousands more podcasts just waiting to take up that headspace for them. So be respectful of their time as well, and be consistent about what you do. Don't start it if you can't run with it. Or be smart. Say that you're only going to do 10 episodes, and then I'm going to come back with another 10 more. Nowadays, doing seasonal podcasts is really hot for people because they don't have the bandwidth to do it every week like that. That's smart. That's being smart, being honest with your audience. So that's my biggest tip for people.
I agree with everything that Len said. As far as our sustainability, I do think helps that we're passionate about what we talk about. Like, we're passionate about these films. We like each other. I do think it helps if you have a team that you enjoy their company. And I think I'm wary of people who kind of say, I'm just going to, as Len said, I'm just going to talk. Like, I think we don't give enough credit to the fact that we all are passionate about something. Oftentimes I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for being passionate about something. I think you can build a podcast off of whatever it is that you're passionate about. And it's not so much about building an audience as it is finding your audience, finding your tribe. So if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life, as they say.
Then you find great guests like Erika, and you have her on your podcast, and they make you look good. And you don't even have to do the work when they come on, because they're podcasting themselves. So she just gets on the mic and she goes, woo, and that just sells the show.
There you go.
There was a lot of whooping. And I appreciate you allowing me to come on and whoop it up and talk about Wicked, which I do think that hopefully I brought you all some new folks to listen to your show, because I have recommended it on more than one occasion to folks, especially to Black men, that I'm like, oh, you'll like this because it's not too much of this, it's not too much of that. It's just fun. It's a relaxed environment. It doesn't feel like you all take yourselves too seriously, but at the same time, you're also very smart about what you know, and you know it well. And I've always wondered, because I know that, Vincent, that you are also a professor. Does the podcast commingle with your teaching? Do you have them listen to the podcast sometimes to drive home some of the stuff that you're teaching?
Absolutely. I actually wrapped up a Black film class this week. I actually had guest lecturer Len Webb come in. So,
look at that.
Yeah, so it does cross over.
Well, and then that's exactly, I think, how you build something that doesn't feel like work, because it just feels like an extension of everything else that you're doing. And in that sense, because this podcast focuses a lot on policy and democracy and all of that, and this was a little bit of a break from that. But I do have to ask you, as Black men in America, thinking about those subject lines, I want to ask you, what do you feel democracy is? And do you think we have democracy?
I think democracy is just what it sounds like. Everyone has a voice. I don't think we have it on a national level, but I also think that our lives can most readily be affected on the local level. I think on a national level, just systemically, you don't have democracy the way we talk about everyone having a voice. And then on a local level, unfortunately, more often than not, it seems like apathy. keeps us from having that kind of democracy. So,
yeah, democracy exists, but our power or ability to affect change really lies in the local, where we are. It begins with ourselves. It begins with us exercising our voice with ourselves, being true to who we are, being true to our own faults, and crookeds and straights, and straighten it up where we need to. It begins with us, therefore, also extending that voice to our people, to our community, to our family, to our friends, as Black men, to our fellow brothers. There was a time when a community would raise a child, and then at some point it became, oh, don't be talking to my kid like that. And it's like, nah, because we're all the community. We all got to watch each other's back. And if we start just on that level and build and get that muscle going and then build it out, you'll see how much more power we'll start to exercise. That's how I firmly believe.
So back to the village.
Yep.
mm-hmm.
Trevor Noah's podcast, the most recent episode talked about that specifically, about the village raising the child. Do you think filmmaking can bring us closer to democracy? The art of filmmaking?
I think it can. Because the one thing with the technology to the point where the level of entry on making something that is professional and accessible to the audience that you want to reach is that much more achievable, right? It used to be because the benchmark was so high, but now you can make an Academy Award winning film with your phone. Because that level of entry is so small, that's no longer a problem. We have these creatives who can come together to exercise their voice, to create a story, to create a project that can inspire change. Can it do it solely on its own? No. I don't think that any film solely can create change, but can it inspire change? Can it ignite a dialogue? Can it be the fuel to a movement of a sort? I believe absolutely. And because we have more opportunities and more venues, more ways of getting that message out there, I absolutely believe that film can be a catalyst for our change and revolution.
I 100% agree. Art has always thrust people forward. That's one of the main purposes of art. So, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you both for taking your time on a Saturday to chat with me about all the things Micheaux Mission and a little bit about democracy. Before we go, is there anything in particular that's coming up on the Micheaux Mission? Any live shows you all are doing? Anything you want to shout out or promote?
We do have a live show that is coming up on May 6th here in Philadelphia. We have teamed with our good friend Stephanie Watts here of the Be Real Black Cinema Club. She does a monthly club that gets together in New York and Philadelphia to screen movies. We've teamed with her for the second year of our Be Real Micheaux screening series at Bryn Mawr Film Institute here in Philadelphia. And on May 6th, we will be screening Beast of the Southern Wild. So if you are in the Philadelphia area at that time, you can check that out. Tickets are on sale now at brynmarfilm.org. It's a great film. We look forward to screening that with our audience, our movie club audience, and then having a live talk back afterwards. And if you come, there will be free pretzels.
There you go.
We didn't get to the pretzel conversation, but like I said, I do enjoy a good pretzel, sans all the salt and none of that weird cheese. And I do like it better than popcorn because popcorn gets stuck in your teeth. So I appreciate both of you. And just to let you know, I do have a sticky note here that has your name on it. This was an email that I need to send on suggestions on things to watch. But since we are talking, I'm just going to tell you now. I would love for you all to review Aisha that I just recently saw. And it has Leticia Wright in it. She's the main character. Okay. She's an immigrant, and it's a whole story about immigration. And it was beautifully done. And then Waves with Sterling K. Brown. Those are my two recommendations for the Micheaux mission on my sticky note here on my desk. I might send you an email anyway to remind you, but that's what I'd like to see sometime soon. And I also know that you all are doing a month of August Wilson too. Is that correct?
It's coming up. Yeah.
Okay. And I want to make sure folks really pay attention to that because I'm a big fan of August Wilson. And so I'm looking forward to that entire month of conversation around his works, his plays, and then how they've been turned into movies. Because I can watch Fences pretty much anytime too.
Okay. And we look forward to you returning to the Micheaux mission because you smartly reviewed Wicked with us so that we can't review Wicked 2 without Erika. Woo!
So. Woo! Well, I'm going to be there. I will be there with bells on and ready to talk about how Black Wicked continues to be. So once again, thank y'all. I appreciate it so much. And I will see you all soon. I will see you all on the next episode of Sticky Note Conversations next Saturday. Thank y'all.
Thanks for listening to Sticky Note Conversations with Erika Washington. Hosted and executively produced by Erika Washington. With editing by Black Gypsy LLC and Simone Endress. Special thanks to KUNV 91.5 in Las Vegas. This show is powered by Make It Work Nevada, a project of Tides Advocacy. And a special thank you to Grove GT Teague and Eno Savad, who made our new theme song, Way Below Acceptable.